is every hidden Minecraft fact that Mojang wouldn't want us to tell you, and so we're doing it anyway. And hey, YouTube tells us what device people subscribe with, whether that's your phone, your TV, your Xbox, whatever. But they've never told us that someone's used another device to subscribe on a different device. And so if you want to get creative, use your TV remote to subscribe on your phone. Really, whatever you can think of, I'd love to hear it. It's free and it helps out a ton. What's the most recent pickaxe that was added to Minecraft? Well, you might think that it's netherite pickaxes because those are the ones that we actually see in game, but during the development of Minecraft Dungeons, Mojang nearly added banana pickaxes to the game. Yeah, it wouldn't have been my pick either, but when these were planned, they were originally going to be added into Minecraft Dungeons in the jungle areas and going to be called, no joke, the Monkey Motivator, which I don't really get how that works. If you add a few sticks into a banana, that doesn't make it any more appetizing for me, but if monkey see and monkey do, then it'd be nice that if we were able to mine with this, then it could also get all the other monkeys to mine with us. But I digress, this melee weapon was never added, and now we just know about it this way. Back before Mojang added in the proper fire texture to the Legacy Console Edition, there was instead a placeholder texture that just looked like this. Now you can probably make out the top part, it says fire text, but what's these bottom few letters? Really, it spells out to be fire texture, honest, which, I mean, I'll have to take their word for it. Although I guess any texture that shows up when you're on fire would happen to be the fire texture, but obviously this didn't last very long in the game. But what's funny is that this still exists in the textures files today, along with all the other, much more believable as fire textures. Before Minecraft ever had biomes, the game would instead generate in different themes. And during the in-depth versions of Minecraft, you find that this themes option would take you to 3 different ideas. Normal, paradise, and that one. And while normal would keep it to the regular terrain that we're all used to, we can see that this one was a lot more of an early example of what the nether would end up being, where instead you would spawn completely surrounded by lava, and also mobs would spawn regardless of light level. And an easy way to tell that this is what inspired the nether, if you look back at the debug menu, you'd see that the biome type of the nether used to list out as this. So it's pretty clear to see where they got the inspiration from. Now, so many others have talked about how creepers came to be from the original pig model, but there's arguably another weird fact that happened with our early creepers, and that would be that during the survival tests of Minecraft, the creepers actually did melee damage to the player, which, yeah, pretty strange to see. But if a player were to get too close to a creeper at this time, they would deal 4 points of damage or 2 hearts of damage if you got too close. And it wasn't until the in-dev phase of 0.31 this feature was ultimately removed. And thankfully so. It'd be pretty brutal if they could attack you to make you lower your shield and then explode. So thankfully it's just one or the other. In Java 1.20, Minecraft added in these special paintings that were originally found in the Bedrock game files. But to say that they added them in is really just a technicality. I mean, sure, they had a data pack that was official that could let you use these paintings, but they're still not obtainable through regular gameplay. And maybe that's for good reason, because as Phoenix SC shows off, these definitely get pretty close to being the 4 elements from Avatar. Who knows, maybe the original 3 paintings were all fine until the fire painting attacked. But what makes this even stranger is that now that we're getting new paintings in 1.21, these still aren't on the docket. Yeah, I don't know, maybe they want to forget about it too. I also didn't like the Avatar Netflix show. If you're like me and you've been playing Minecraft for some time, then you notice that your taskbar started to look pretty differently recent years. And that's because, basically out of nowhere, the Minecraft launcher icon had its iconic grass block texture changed into now just being a flat creeper sprite, which I can't say that I don't get. I mean, obviously the creeper's a lot more of an iconic mob from the game, but the grass block was iconic because it was the icon for so many years of the most popular game in the world. Hard to say that wasn't effective. And where this gets really disappointing is when you start to look at all of the different legacy launcher versions of this as well, where there it's just this ugly tan creeper design, or even this little cutesy chibi version of the grass block that they did not that long ago. That fit better than whatever this is, but I digress. If you've ever messed around with the potion effects in Minecraft, you're aware that there's something called the luck effect, which even though you're not able to get it through a potion, it's an effect that's able to change your luck that you might have with certain loot tables. And so it makes sense that at one point Mojang added in a new status effect called bad luck, which would have just done the opposite, but it was never followed through on. However, there is still a texture file for this effect, looking instead like a withered 4-leaf clover. But honestly, even if they didn't add this in officially, I think plenty of us have experienced bad luck in Minecraft. We don't need to add on to that. Now, at some point, you might have seen this meme about the universal sign of peace being pressing the sneak key repeatedly to make your character shift up and down. And while it's the best form of universal communication that we have in the game, it seems that there actually was planned at some point the ability to have an alliance letter to different teammates. See, back while developing the Legacy Console Edition versions, there was a feature that would allow you to team up with different people and make truces within minigames. Kind of like how the scoreboard function works, except a lot more accessible on the player side than the mapmaker side. But the idea was ultimately scrapped, and all we've got left over is this graphic, and glad we at least have something to see. Now, the actual playable releases of Minecraft aren't the only things that get updates, since over the years, the actual launchers have gotten updates too. See, prior to release release of the Java Edition Launcher 2.1, the older launcher used to have some fun Easter eggs. One example being that if you hovered your mouse cursor over the play button for a few seconds, then that would cause a mob to spawn in the bottom corner of the launcher. Another one being that if you ever hit Control B during the launcher, then that hotkey would cause the experience orb pickup sound to play, which is one you should be familiar with. We play it every time a new section starts. Like this. Before the peony was ever added to Minecraft, there was originally a smaller version of the flower called the peonia, which by itself wouldn't be that weird, right? I mean, there's been other more notable flowers that have been removed from Minecraft, like the rose to the poppy, but what's strangest about the peonia is that the texture was also updated in the 1.14 texture update, despite the fact that it hasn't been accessible since 1.7. I mean, I don't think it was a big amount of work to do, but it was a non-zero amount of work for what? If you've ever played around with technical Minecraft mods, you're familiar with the idea of steel. Since the original plan when ores were first added into the game was that the players would combine together coal and iron to make steel plating. And it is interesting that with all this different smelting, we've never had any kind of alloy in Minecraft, but we never got this. And really, the only way that you combine coal and iron together is to smelt your iron ore down into iron ingots. But hey, it's simple enough for me. I'm not complaining. Prior to the update Aquatic, if you were to go fishing, the only fish you were gonna find was just fish. It was raw fish and cooked fish. But when we got all these other fish, they also took away this fish, meaning that we also never got to see an entity form of this item. But what's interesting is that if you actually look at the fisherman texture of these villagers, you can see that they do, even after 1.14, still have this fish texture. Very strange. And if you want to see what an entity version of this would have looked like, then we showed that along with a whole bunch of other forgotten features in our mod showcase on the Rediscovered mod. High definition textures in Minecraft sound like a pipe dream, or at the very least, something that's going to make your computer smoke something awful if you try to use it. But did you know that there was actually a high definition 64 by 64 texture that was added in Minecraft? See, during the April Fool's snapshot for the infinite version of Minecraft, if you were to go around to one of these infinite dimensions, there was a special one that had a special item called a very fine item. And really, the only way to obtain this was by finding it, since it can't be crafted nor found in the creative menu, only in the isolation dimension. But what do you do with it? Nothing. It's really just meant as a trophy, if anything. But hey, when you find it in the isolation dimension, you can't really blame it for being lame. When smooth stone slabs were originally added to Bedrock Edition, it was possible to craft one of these out of any stone, whether that was andesite, diorite, polished granite, you name it, you could make a smooth stone slab out of it. Which for those of us coming over from Java, really doesn't make sense because those other items have their own slabs. And that's obviously why this got changed later on. But it is still annoying to me that we were able to use any stone for this kind of item, but we've never been able to use it for a stone pickaxe. I mean, call it a cobblestone pickaxe at that point. Nah, I'm an old man, I'll take any excuse to rant. Dynamic lighting is something that the community's wanted for Minecraft for ages. But like many features that the community's wanted, it's one of those features that Mojang's previously considered, and it's not going to make it into the game. But hey, there's plenty of mods to do it, and even data packs in recent versions. So I highly recommend one of those if you're looking for this. Having a hat to wear while you go mining is one of the most requested features for Minecraft. But unfortunately for us, it's just gonna stay one of the most requested features because Mojang has stated officially through their previously considered suggestions page that having an item that lights up the area as you go is just too modern. And I can see why this is the case, because if it was added in, why would you ever use night vision potions? But what's also true is that it's already possible for your helmet to help light up around you just underwater. Since with the help of enchantments like respiration, we do get more visibility down in the depths. I mean, look, it's not a lot, but it's something that's there. And with it shut down like this, that's literally the best we're gonna get. Ever since January 25th of 2019, this Minecraft dream has been crushed, literally. Since that was when Mojang said that there would never be any sleeping bags added to Minecraft. Going on further to say that beds are so unique in function that it's highly unlikely that there will be any additional furniture items that'll be like them, which is really unfortunate. It would be great to have a way to pass the night without actually setting your spawn point. And that's why mods have versions of this item that work exactly like that. But in the meantime, we're just gonna have to settle for the best of making our bed look like a sleeping bag by putting slabs around it like so. Ever since the hunger bar was added into Minecraft, it really hasn't changed much at all. And especially since it's become generally accepted that golden carrots are the best food source, there really hasn't been much change here, which is why players often go for adding in thirst as another mechanic to balance. But Mojang has said that even though the team has looked into this, they would really just prefer to focus on hunger and hunger mechanics. And given the fact that hunger really hasn't changed even after it's been basically broken in recent updates, I get a feeling they're not all that much interested in that too, which is a shame for us and for the water bottle item. But hey, at least we're able to use water bottles to turn dirt into mud. Maybe we're not thirsty, but the dirt certainly is. Multiple mods have an idea where you're able to add an elytra together with your chest plate, but according to Minecraft, it's really intentional that part of the trade-off of having an elytra is that it's supposed to take up half of your armor slots, and that if you were able to work around this through enchantments or an actual chest plate, it would make it way too obvious to have this. But at the very least, since they made this announcement in July 12th of 2018, we're now able to quickly switch between our elytra and our chest plate in our hotbar, so it's not too difficult to get right back into combat mode after you're flying away. It's just intentional that it's always going to be a separate mode. It's either fight or flight, you choose. In 1.14, it appeared as if Mojang added in bluestone for a second, or at least considered it, since you can see one of the villagers toss up this blue item into the sky after the raid is successfully won. Though this was confirmed to be a mistake, and it was never intended to be a feature added into the game. And in fact, the only cobalt that we're ever going to see from Mojang was this old game that they made in the past. Slowly but surely, Mojang seems to be adding in different colors of wood to match up with the different dyes that we have to choose from. But while this definitely seems to be happening, albeit slowly, it's still intentional that we're never going to get a dyeable wood type into the game. According to them, the current limitations are by design. And while it's true that recent updates have brought us green and pink wood, they haven't necessarily also given us slabs or stair variants of those blocks, which I've got to say is pretty brutal. Casting spells in Minecraft doesn't seem like a far cry from what we're already able to do, right? I mean, what's an enchantment if not a magic item? But Jeb's actually gone on record saying that they'll never add this feature into the game because of parity reasons. And maybe it's just me, but I don't see how there would be a parity problem there. I mean, presumably they would add it into both Bedrock and Java, so there you go, parity solved. Though maybe it's so that we don't get confused between ourselves and the witches. And I think that if Mojang ever wanted to add in the Illusioner mob properly, then a magic-based system or update would be a good way to do it. Originally, for players on Bedrock Edition, there were plans to make a special resource pack and shader overhaul called the Super Duper Graphics Pack, but this was cancelled and never actually added in. Now, with saying this, don't get it confused with Minecraft RTX with its ray tracing features. It has nothing to do with how the actual textures look, and what we would have gotten from the Super Duper Graphics Pack would be a lot more akin to what you see with Sonic Ethers on Java. But nope, the only way to see this was at E3 2017 and Minecon Earth of the same year. But just like Minecon Earth, it's cancelled, and we're not going to see it again. Another feature from Minecraft Earth that's been left to the wayside are the meerkats and ostriches that we saw in the Savannah biome update. And even though these lost the vote, it's not like they've been forgotten, since even Mojang said that they would consider adding it in a later update. And honestly, I'm pretty surprised that they didn't add in the termites with the armadillo. I think that would have made a lot more sense for a food stuff than spider eyes. And also seeing termite mounds scattered across the savannah would give the biome a lot more of its own unique feel, not just a different wood type. Before we had Minecraft Lego sets, there was originally an idea to have Lego Minecraft, or rather Brickcraft as it was called. Since from September 5th of 2011 to July 19th of 2012, Mojang worked alongside the Lego group to make a special game that was going to be based off both Legos and Minecraft, with the codename Project Rex Kwon-Do, as a reference to the film Napoleon Dynamite. And while they did hire 2 new programmers to work on this game, it ultimately never came to fruition for either company. And in fact, the only way that we came to know about it was because of a podcast episode that Lego put out to celebrate their 25th anniversary of the first ever Lego game. And when you look for the reason that it was cancelled, apparently it's because they wanted to have a lot of hurdles to make sure that the game kept up its family-friendly image. And to put that in perspective, when Lego Universe was out, Lego's MMO, they had whole teams that basically bankrupted the project just to make sure that people could make nothing that was, let's say, unmonetizable in the game. So it seems like that didn't just kill one project. And all we have left of the game now are these screenshots. This is Minecraft, and this is Minicraft, which was a 2D version of the game that was originally made by Notch for the 2011 Ludum Dare, which is a contest where game developers are given 48 hours to try and make their game prototype. And while this was released on December 19th of 2011, it never got any official updates. But hey, there are creepers, and I guess if we ever wanted to see what Minecraft NES Edition would look like, this is a pretty good example of it. Dolphins are adorable, but they could be cuter. Or they would be if Mojang didn't have this rule. But for some reason, baby dolphins only exist in the Bedrock version of the game, and there are no plans to add them into Java. Even on Mojang's official list of rejected features, they have baby dolphins listed, with no mention of why that's the case. Though recent updates have seen a lot of steps taken to have parity between Java and Bedrock, so there might still be a future where we have baby dolphins in Java. Drowned jockeys, on the other hand, are a total no-go. See, some fans have asked to have Drowned ride the dolphins, similarly to how zombies ride chickens, but according to Mojang, saying no one gets to ride dolphins, whether that's the player or the monsters. That said, if you use this command here, you can still spawn in a drowned riding a dolphin like so, and it is every bit as terrifying as you'd imagine. This one makes it seem like Minecraft's having an identity crisis, at least its code is, since while you are supposed to use a sword to break bamboo and cobwebs faster, it doesn't make much sense that doing that also uses up double the durability than it would if you just used a regular tool. And considering this has been unresolved in the bug tracker since back in July of 2020, I don't think we have any hope of getting this fixed anytime soon anyway. So at that point, the question's up to you. Would you rather waste your time or your sword's durability? I guess when you put it that way, it seems obvious. Alright, pop quiz. What do you do after accidentally hitting a zombie piglet? Well, the solution's simpler than you might think, since all we gotta do is take after this user on Reddit and dig out 2 blocks into the ground and then build 2 blocks up so that we're standing safe. And from there, if we hold crouch and move back over the hole, then at that point, all the zombie piglins are just gonna run into that confined space. And once we got them crammed in there like sardines, all we have to do is drop 2 pieces of gravel on top of them, and they'll all suffocate down there in the pit, making this the simplest way to get off their bad side. Though keep in mind that if you do this, you might run the risk of them spawning zombies as reinforcements. But as long as you're stayed up on their tower, you'll be able to easily dispatch them too, proving that this mistake was as easy to solve as it was to make. Do you remember the Minecraft update where Mojang deleted Minecraft? Yeah, it sounds silly, but back in the beta version for 1.1, if you launched Minecraft, everything would seem to be normal, except for when the game actually launched and you would see that there was no text anywhere. Yep, all of the Minecraft font completely gone. Even in-game, all of the item names have completely disappeared, and you also couldn't see the item quantity, which is made particularly bad by the fact that the early textures were pretty tough to make out. So if you didn't have text to guide your hand, who's to say what any of these actually were? Now sure, there is fire here, but with a debug stick, we can change the way that it's facing until it's no longer rendered like normal. And in fact, we can only see the flames if we crouch down over here. They're completely invisible anywhere else. As wild as this L shape looks, it is possible in Minecraft history. And as Baron Dome will show you, there was one of these triple chests that naturally generated on 2b2t. And the way this was created was by 2 different dungeons generating nearby each other. And nowadays, the closest we can get to this is by using a mod like Colossal Chests, which is arguably just as cursed. With this command, it's possible to summon a permanent falling sand entity. And by changing this NBT tag, we can make it look like any block is placed outside of the grid. And by using invisible shulker entities, we can give these new illegal blocks their own hitboxes, so they'd even behave the same way, giving us cursed sites like this, or even letting us place blocks underneath the void. And that'd be how Mysticat built this entire house underneath the bedrock floor. In science, perpetual motion machines are just a hypothesis, but in Minecraft, it's as simple as 8 rails placed together like so. Since by building a square of regular rails like this, if you place a minecart on top of the slope, it'll continue to go around and around the loop, never slowing down. And to make things funnier, you put an entity inside, and that just makes the whole thing speed up. Here's how to make your spyglass even better. Since the way that the spyglass works, it actually modifies your existing FOV. So while we could use our regular FOV and have it zoom in this much, if we lower that FOV to the bottom at 30, then you'll notice when we use the spyglass, it zooms in even closer. And then if you got an additional zoom mod on top of that, you can really use this trick to get up close and personal, and then immediately switch off the lower FOV, because playing the rest of the game this way is miserable. Ever since Minecraft's Wild update, this popular feature no longer exists. But before 1.19, it was possible to upgrade your brightness from bright to super bright, considering that you could go into the game's files and just manually change the gamma settings. But I guess it does make sense that the same update that they added in, the deep dark, they would also remove this insane brightness option. It kinda removes the fun. And nowadays, the only way they're gonna pull this off is by using one of the many mods out there that exist for a third-party alternative. One of the best parts of the Caves and Cliffs update's first half is the addition of axolotls. I mean, they're certainly the cutest feature, that's no contest. But what these water wolves have in the ocean, they don't exactly match on land. And you'll see as much if you beach one. They move pretty slow. That is, until you tie one to a lead, and then it'll move surprisingly fast speeds. Why this happens, I've got no clue. But it is pretty hilarious, so I'm fine with it not making sense. But you might be wondering how you even explore ancient cities without having to worry about you-know-who. Well, Ilamango's got you covered. Since with this machine, if we just shoot 6 arrows onto the wool block at the bottom of the arrow chamber, then we can close it back up and flip this on and off switch on the hopper clock, which all comes together to mean that we're completely disabling warden spawning. So even though you might hear warden sounds coming from this machine, the actual truth is those are the sounds of failed warden spawn attempts, since when you look around, you're not gonna see any. And not only will this work in the ancient city that you built it within, but because of the built-in built-in chunk loading, we guarantee that this works in any ancient city that you step into in the world, just as long as you're the player that shot the arrows into the machine. And at that point, we can use our hoe to get rid of all the skulk shriekers, so that even when this machine isn't working, we're still not gonna have to worry about the warden. Minecraft cats haven't always looked this way, and I'm not talking about new textures, but rather removing some textures. Since strangely enough, in Snapshot 20W45A, the cats that you'd see walking around appeared to have lost their legs. Which, hey, that's some great representation for three-legged cats. But it was also most certainly a bug, and that's why this got fixed when it reached the bug tracker. And I guess the only tripod we have left is the one in the Education Edition. There's a lot of debates over whether birch logs are ugly, and while I don't want to weigh in on those, I will say that Snapshot 20W28A didn't do you any favors. Since back then, there was a very weird bug when it came to birch trees, where when you'd load up your world, the birch trees would spawn in a square formation in every birch forest, creating this really unnatural sight. And I get that Minecraft's a game made out of squares and cubes, but this might just be pushing it too far. Depth strata can obviously help you move faster in water, so what about lava? Unfortunately, even if you drink a fire resistance potion to test this out, there's no difference that comes from wearing these boots or not. And that means slugging through the nether is going to be just this slow, regardless of how you do it. One of the most recent lies in Minecraft is that the ancient city actually has a giant portal that can be lit. But regardless of how many videos and thumbnails you've seen trying to say otherwise, that's just not the case. But mhmm didn't help themselves here, since for a brief time in the files of the snapshot, they actually did refer to this structure as a portal. And at that point, you're just begging for people to theorize about it. So it's not true, but who knows, maybe it was supposed to be. What are the classic Minecraft debates? You got Java versus Bedrock, creative versus survival, and dirt versus sand for planting your sugarcane. But to put all of those to rest, the truth is that the game has actually never checked to see what block the sugarcane's planted on. So whether it's dirt, grass, sand, or even mud, none of those are going to contribute to the sugarcane that you're planting. So pick the best for your aesthetic and leave it there. One of the oldest rules in Minecraft is that you should never dig straight down. But that old rule is really just old hat. Since when you crunch the numbers like Mumbo Jumbo did, you notice that over 64% of the time that you dig straight down, nothing's gonna happen. You're not gonna fall into lava, you're not gonna fall into a cave and break your legs, just nothing. And if you want to increase those odds to even better chances of survival, what you could always do is stand in between two blocks like this and then mine down one after the other. So then if you notice that one of the blocks drops down into a ravine or lava, you'll still be standing on the other block. And at that point, if you don't correct your mistake, you deserve to fall into lava. Before the so-called flattening, there are ways to give yourself special six-sided blocks through give commands in Minecraft. And while some of these have been added in official capacity, such as the six-sided logs or the smooth stone block, I think it'd be great to see something like the six-sided piston return as an official capacity. Maybe it's a crate block. Or if you want to add in extra redstone functionality, you could use this as a way to extend the piston push limit past 12 blocks. I don't know, I just think it would be cool to see these features that were historic in some Minecraft players' journey return officially, especially if they've already picked a few of them to do this with. Here's why this anvil will never fall, or this sign will never break, even if it's not supported by anything. Since with this simple little piston contraption, we're able to completely break Minecraft logic. Now, when the sticky piston retracts, it doesn't properly update the block that's on top of it, or the one that you attach to the piston's arm. And the reason for that is because the piston doesn't actually think it's supposed to work, since the obsidian's keeping the slime blocks from being able to move. And as such, the slime blocks aren't the only one that doesn't move, and we can get all of these illegal blocks that you see here, giving us one of the simplest ways to do update suppression, and one that still works in modern versions, might I add. Of course, TNT explosions can pack quite the punch. That is, until you put these underwater, and then that demolition dream fizzles out. But apparently, since Minecraft turns prime TNT into an entity instead of a block, we're able to put other things like sand into that same hitbox. And by doing that, the TNT will explode just the same, even if it's at the bottom of the ocean. It's absolutely a weird feature, but if you want to get rid of ocean ruins, this lack of logic might be your best solution. With just a lever and some redstone dust, we're able to lag the game so much that we can basically freeze time. It gets pretty laggy when you connect a bunch of these up to a lever. And then by using something like the fast right-click feature in a mod like Tweakaroo, we can flip that same lever on and off until eventually the redstone's updating so much that we basically slowed time down to a crawl. And then that's where the fun begins, since one of the easiest tricks to pull off with this is to break bedrock. Or if you wanted to, you could use this to freeze time on a multiplayer server, build an entire structure, and then when time switches back to normal, your friend will have no idea where that came from. But let me warn that in that case, you don't want to span the lever for too long, since doing it for longer than 60 seconds might just trigger Minecraft's watchdog to terminate the server. But as long as you freeze time in smaller increments, they'll be none the wiser. For a brief time in Minecraft, the deadliest mob in the game happened to be a falling block. Yeah, doesn't look too intimidating here, but back in Snapshot 18W31A, there was a peculiar bug where if you dropped a falling block on top top of a mob, for some reason that would cause the mob to sink into the ground. And unfortunately, we weren't any safer, since if a player was squashed by a falling block, he would just fall through every other block in the world, including bedrock, and then die in the void. The only ones who are safe are shulkers, and maybe that means their shells are better for armor than we thought. You've heard the saying when pigs fly, but how about striders? And sure enough, back in snapshot 20W14A, if you used a fishing rod to pull up a strider into the air and then jumped on it, it would just float in place, and then you could even ride it and move around while it's floating. And even though that got patched out, there is still a way to make a strider float. If you jump off a cliff with a couple of warp funguses on a stick, then when you scroll through them, the strider glitches out and it slowly descends down the fall. Every now and then, mhmm will add in an item, but then it just flies under the radar because it doesn't get used. And for my money, I gotta say that one of those is rabbit stew. Because after all, if you take all of the different ingredients that it takes to make a rabbit stew and just eat them separately, it will fill up more hunger than the rabbit stew does altogether. So either mhmm needs to change it so that these stews have a bit more going for them, or they're just gonna stay at the bottom of the eating bin. Apparently, the warden isn't blind, despite what you might think, since when you go into spectator mode and then click on certain mobs, that'll allow you to see the world through their eyes, which lets you see that things like creepers, endermen, and spiders have very different ways of seeing the world. So with that logic, when you click on the warden, you'd expect something different, but in reality, it just sees the world the same as you and me. Which, while that could be an interesting piece of lore, it's more likely than not just an oversight on a seldom used mechanic. On this channel, we've often talked about how lame the cauldron is, and I'll still stick by that. But what makes this even more hurtful is the fact that the cauldron could have been so much better, since one of the features that mhmm removed from Minecraft was the plans for an advanced potion system. And with this idea, we could have made a lot more modifications to the potions that we're used to, instead of just adding redstone for duration and glowstone for potency. And until we see changes like the ones that were shown off in the combat test snapshot, I think the best we're gonna see for a while is just changing the potion colors like they did in the last update. Which is nice, but it could have been so much cooler, and hopefully it still will. By having skeletons and zombies burn in the daylight, mhmm found an ingenious way to encourage players to explore during the day. But while that mechanic is a solid piece of game design, it does have a few odd quirks as well, such as how all of these blocks can't stop a skeleton from burning, but the cobweb does. Now, I get it, things like a chest are a transparent block, and they're coded as such, but a cobweb? That just doesn't make any sense. And if you ask me, if it lets light get through, then it should still apply to the sun rays as well. With this glitch, you can sprint forever without losing a single hunger bar. And the way it happens is that if you simply punch an enemy while you're sprinting, and then continue to sprint afterwards, that'll negate all of the sprint's hunger drain. And as user ElliotX shows off, this could be a game changer for speedrunning, especially because it's allowed in runs. But keep in mind that you will still lose hunger when you're jumping during this. And the way it all works is that the game thinks that when you punch, that you'd stop sprinting. So in that case, the server sees you as walking, but the client still believes that it's sprinting. And then that desyncs enough for us to manipulate and get all of this extra speed without ever having to do it on an empty stomach. In Bedrock Edition, it's possible to waterlog doors, which apparently the code took to mean that there's some leftover water hidden in the door. And you can see as much from this Reddit user's discovery, which is that if you stood at the edge of the corner in Bedrock Edition and flipped the door back and forth, you'd notice that the bubbles would start to appear over your hunger bar, which sure enough meant that we were able to drown ourselves inside of a door with no water in sight. Which makes it even more ironic that on Java Edition, we're able to use the doors to stop ourselves from drowning, which honestly, I prefer over the alternative. With the 1.16 update, Minecraft of course added in two new log equivalents, the Crimson and Warped Stem blocks. And sure, it makes sense that these wouldn't burn to a flint and steel or a furnace, but why can they be used as fuel in a campfire? As you can see, when crafting this item, it's possible to use the nether stems as the kindling, just like the regular logs, even though they don't burn in the regular gameplay. But if you're really looking to cook up a steak in the nether, I guess this is how you do it. Despite what you might think, you can't kill the Ender Dragon with snowballs. But if you believe this, it's easy to see why. It did used to be a feature in the game, but now if you go to try it, it won't even damage tick the dragon like it does to other mobs. And now the only thing that your snowballs are good for are breaking the end crystals in the fight. But in fairness, if the dragon gets close enough to one of those, then that explosion could still damage it. So this is still true, but not true, but kinda true. It's all over the place. In a brief period between Minecraft 1.9 to 1.10, there existed a bug called piston translocation, which is that if the piston arm extended into you and then retracted, it could pull you up through the piston, which when that existed allowed for some incredibly fast and impressive elevators. I mean, really, the ways that this let you manipulate entities was pretty impressive, but now it just doesn't work the same. Not only was the bug patched out, but now if you have a piston push you down, it pushes you into crawling. And I think having some way for this feature to return would be really cool. Maybe even taking after this Reddit post and saying that it should be a translocator block. I don't know, I think it'd be neat. If you play Minecraft on PC, you're probably not familiar with this, but for those of you who played Minecraft Minecraft on console, this is instantly recognizable as the Minecraft tutorial world. And it's probably a bit nostalgic because this hasn't been in the game since. But in this iconic world, you'd find the classic Minecraft logo built across the sky with a whole bunch of tutorials underneath to teach you the details of Minecraft. But as charming as this was, it was removed from the game eventually, and now the only way to get it is by downloading a map. The actual fastest pickaxe in the game happens to be gold, though that comes with a couple caveats. For one, the difference can be situational, so some blocks will behave the same, while others the gold will mine faster. But more importantly is that this difference changes when the pickaxes are enchanted. Since while it's true that an unenchanted gold pickaxe is better than an unenchanted netherite, when you enchant both of them with efficiency 5, then the netherite pickaxe actually shines. Oh, and also it has more durability than a toothpick, so maybe that's still worth using. And unless you're a speedrunner trying to clear out netherrack, there's really no point to using this golden pickaxe ever. The Ender Dragon wasn't supposed to be the only dragon in Minecraft, and in fact, there used to be an idea for a red dragon as well. As Notch said, this mob would have been slightly less dangerous than the Ender Dragon, and that they would have spawned in the overworld instead. And hey, even Jeb and Dinnerbone have mentioned wanting to add the mob at some point. So it's definitely been considered, but it doesn't seem like it's coming anytime soon, if at all. In the final shot of the Minecraft 1.20 trailer, when Steve's running into the cave, we see a few anomalies on the wall here. Unfortunately, without the use of mods, the spiders cannot climb horizontally. And that's not the only issue in this shot, since there's also something weird going on with our skeletons, which is that if we zoom in and look closely, sure enough, none of the skeletons walking towards Steve actually have any bows and arrows here, or any weapons. They're really more walking like zombies, which is made even weirder by the fact that earlier in the trailer, they show skeletons coming out of the sand dunes, and those skeletons have their bows and arrows, but they still got the spider climbing wrong, so some things never change. You ever realize that Minecraft used to feel quite a bit scarier? Well, that's not just your imagination and nostalgia blindness, but part of that could also be features like void fog getting removed in recent updates. Truly, the lower that you got down to the world, when you eventually reached the bedrock floor, you would have this huge dark fog clogging up your vision, which created a really great spooky atmosphere when you were down there branch mining. But in 2014, Mojang removed the void fog, saying that it was supposed to help improve performance. But now that there's a lot more people to help out optimizing Minecraft, and a lot more performance mods even if they don't, I think it'd be nice to see this return in some official capacity, even if it's just an option that you can turn off in accessibility. What do you call this Minecraft mob? Nowadays, I think we'd all agree it's a chicken, but that wasn't always the case. And there used to be a heated debate during the beta that this mob was a duck, not a chicken. I mean, even Notch referred to the mob as the chicken, duck, whatevers. So maybe that history is why Mojang decided that ducks will never be added to Minecraft. Though if you look at these community-made examples, it's clear that there is a lot more to be done here than just recolorations of the chickens. But instead, they could swim around in the new 1.19 swamps and rivers. This screenshot is illegal in modern Minecraft, and it's nothing to do with what's in the picture, but rather the picture itself. Since for only a brief time during Minecraft's history, there was an implementation where you were able to take 645 megapixel screenshots. And as Mumbo put that into perspective, a 1080p screen is 2 megapixels. An 8K screen, that would be 33 megapixels. This $50,000 camera, that would be 400 megapixels. And Minecraft, still 245 bigger. That would have been a resolution of 36,450 by 17,700 pixels. And while you could only do this back in the beta versions, that might have been for good reason, because most one of these screenshots could take up 1.8 gigabytes of space. And most of the time, they didn't even work. And while I'm not saying I want to take screenshots that are that big, I do think that having the opportunity to take super high resolution screenshots in-game would still be an awesome feature. Or even just being able to change our screenshot resolution anyway. Much in the same way you can do with Replay Mod, that would be a welcome return. That puts the power back in the player's hands, instead of accidentally filling up their hard drive when you press the F2 key. In the trailer for 1.15, you can see an iron golem holding out a poppy to a villager, which will still happen, but the only thing is that the villagers never seem to care about it anymore. Because with all the buggy changes they're added in 1.14, one of those is that the villagers will never take the poppy when it's given to them. And apparently Mojang didn't get the memo that they broke this in the last update, since even after it stopped working in 1.14, it made it into this trailer for 1.15. Gold tools might get the least amount of playtime in a Minecraft world. After all, without a gold farm, these things are pretty expensive to craft. And when you do, you barely get any durability anyway. But this might be its single biggest embarrassment. As you can see, every tool in Minecraft can break its respective material. Wood breaks wood, iron breaks iron, netherite breaks netherite, except for the gold one. And folks, you know it's bad when even the gold ore is always unimpressed with Gold's performance. Sometimes the past is very different from how you remember it, but even factoring the Mandela effect, I swear that Minecraft 1.9 never looked like this when I played it. And unfortunately, now when you go to boot up Minecraft 1.9 in the standard Minecraft launcher, you'll instead be greeted to the sight of everything looking completely broken. The text in the chat will be off, textures look weird, parts of the world are just missing, but luckily when you play this version through other third-party launchers, those tend to fare a little better. Now, waterlogged stairs are a surprisingly helpful addition to Minecraft, because, as you'd expect, the stair allows water to pour out one way, yet the next step will prevent water from leaking out the back. Though, if that's the case, then this cobblestone generator doesn't make much sense. Since flowing water is required to make cobblestone post-generation, then how does the cobblestone form at the back when it should be sealed by this step? But go figure, it still converts the lava just the same. In the trailer for the Trails and Tales update, we see Steve diving into the water to find some of the new Tide armor trims. But when he dives down, he gets noticeably close to the pufferfish, enough for it to puff up, which if Minecraft's taught us anything, that also means that Steve would get poisoned. No amount of cool looking armor is gonna change that. When you have an elytra equipped and you start flying down, you feel like you're going at terminal velocity. And while you will find it terminal when you hit the ground and lose all your items, the truth is that you fall the same speed that you would without the elytra at all. Really, it's just the angle of the player model that makes you think this. And with or without an elytra, you'll find that the max terminal velocity for a player falling is 78.4 blocks per second. When Steve and Alex die in the Nether update trailer, you'll notice that their stuff seems to vanish with them. But the answer here isn't as simple as using something like keep inventory. Since in that same trailer, when they come back to life with the respawn anchor, they're still missing all of their gear that they lost in the previous shot. And because they respawn, they're not on hardcore mode, I guess they're just playing on some rare difficulty that only exists within Mojang's rendering server. If you look at the original sprite file for the items.png that used to be in Minecraft, what you'll notice is quite a few items that were textured but never added to the game fully. And among those was the quiver, which had its origins in the Legend of the Chambered game that Notch had made prior. And more interestingly is that this wasn't just a forgotten thing, since on the 22nd of January in 2010, the texture was actually flipped to be a mirrored version. So they didn't forget about it, until of course they switched the way that Minecraft worked entirely with the resource pack update, and that meant we lost the quiver. That was until Dinnerbone tweeted out these two screenshots, one showing the quiver being used in survival, and another one showing it in the creative inventory. So it seemed like they even planned to add it in with the new tipped arrows. But again, after 1.9 fully came out, there was no mention of this anymore. But with inventory management being such a big problem for Minecraft, having a different way to hold extra arrows on hand without having to clog up your inventory, I think that's still worth exploring. Turtle eggs are perhaps the most fragile thing in Minecraft. Truly, just about anything can trample these, whether that's us, baby zombies, or even bees. Yeah, that's right, bees. Now, I get that these bees are pretty chubby by most standards, but I thought their wings would make them a little lighter on their feet. But apparently, according to Mojang, mixing your honey and scute farms together isn't gonna happen anytime soon. Which, when you say that out loud, that part makes sense. Minecraft's villagers used to look like this. See, back in 2010, a player suggested adding in pigmen as NPCs into the game. And for a time, these were the things that were planned to live in the villages, instead of the Squidwards that we all know today. But even though that got shelved, the idea of a zombie pigman did make it into the game, and so we got these instead. Though even those mobs were removed to make room for zombified piglins instead. So it seems like Mojang can never quite decide what to do with them, which is a shame since the idea was that you could even hire these pigmen as bodyguards, which is something Mojang even refuses to do for villagers. But let's talk about that later in the video. Did you know that mobs used to be scared of creepers? Sure enough, when there was a creeper that was ready to explode, early versions of the game would see other hostile mobs run away from the creeper, which was a fun little detail. But the way they went about implementing it was a little silly, since the way that it was coded, each mob would be checking for an exploding creeper near them every single tick, which is a lot of updates to send out. And really, I'm surprised there wasn't a simpler way to do that. Just have the creeper, when it's ready to explode, send a tag out to other nearby hostile mobs in a certain radius, and then they can get scared. That way it's reactive instead of proactive. But apparently it was just easier to remove this entirely, though I would still like to see it return, and hopefully better coded. Now, this is a villager night, and while fans would love to see this, Mojang's gone on record saying that they'll never make it into the game. Yep, villagers are pacifists, and that's why the iron golems exist. But that doesn't explain why, if you use a dispenser, it's possible to equip armor onto a villager like so. And look, it'll even function like normal, allowing our villagers to use the thorns and other enchantments. So maybe this was considered at some point during their development, but going forward, they've put their foot down, and there are no plans to see these violent villagers in the future, even if it would be cool. While it has been possible to break unbreakable blocks using giant mushrooms, such as the end portal frames like this, the same can't be said with bedrock, which is a confusing confusing distinction, but regardless of how many times you try it, it'll just never generate in a way to break the bedrock. And honestly, we should have been tipped off at the fact that the mushrooms can grow on top of the bedrock roof. Clearly they're friends. Now, the whole point of the Village and Pillage trailer is that the villagers are dancing when they're getting raided, which obviously doesn't happen in the game, at least not with the villagers. Because more peculiar is that the pillagers are actually the one dancing when they finish a raid. And the piglins also have a chance of dancing when they finish a hoglin hunt, which begs the question, why were those added in, but when the villagers celebrate you as the hero of the village, the most they do is throw off a couple of fireworks. Seems like a missed opportunity to me. Why are there no sharks in Minecraft? Well, according to Mojang, all hostile mobs need to be fantasy creatures. Otherwise, they might encourage some real-world consequences. Make the sharks too docile, and people think it's safe to approach them. But make them hostile, and you might add on to the ongoing shark finning problem. But even though sharks aren't planned for Minecraft anytime soon, the door is still open for a potential shark-inspired mob in the future. And besides, it'd be nice to have a hostile mob that's actually affected by the impaling enchantment, since in Java it only works on fish, not even the undead drown mob. For the same reasons that sharks won't make it into Minecraft, crocodiles and alligators are also ruled out, though this could have a workaround. See, like the polar bear, these mobs can be very territorial, but neutral in some way. So maybe they only attack the player's boat instead of the player, which will encourage you to jump across the lily pads in the swamp instead. And really, even though Mojang has ruled this one out, it might be worth reconsidering some kind of implementation with the changes to the swamps in 1.19's Wild update. Or if that's still too realistic, how about having a special crocodile that'll blend into the mud, right up until it's ready to bite you. Endermen don't like water, that's pretty obvious. But that's apparently not absolute, since even though they'll go out of their way to avoid the rain or a water bucket like this, if you put that same water bucket inside of a cauldron, then they're able to stand inside just fine. What happens when you take a screenshot in Minecraft? You're probably expecting something like this, or more likely some mistake one like this. But for a brief time during the in-dev phase of Minecraft, there was actually a way to take an isometric screenshot that would look like this. And when you press the F7 key, it would save the current location of all the mobs, and then show any alterations to the map that you had made. And while there are some mods that let us do the same thing, like the isometric renders mod, it would be really cool to see this come back into the base game, especially since we're able to build way more impressive things than we could back in the in-dev phase. And also, there's a lot of function keys at the top of the keyboard that still aren't doing anything in Minecraft. Seems like a good excuse to bind it to one of those. Mojang has gone on record saying that they'll never add in a feature that allows us to automate mining, because having an automatic way to break our blocks just doesn't seem like it fits well into Minecraft. Now, I say that, and plenty of you are probably thinking, and rightfully so, what about TNT duplication machines? And we'll be honest, that's kind of a gray area, since Mojang isn't a big fan of us duplicating our TNT like this, but because there's no other way to have movable tile entities, so no way to have movable dispensers for our TNT and the flying machines, Mojang has to leave this in until they find a different solution. So in short, we get automatic mining, not because Mojang wants us to have automatic mining, but because they don't know another way for us to have moving TNT. And I just think that's hilarious. This is not Steve, nor is this guy. See, all of these decoys are just the unreleased human mob, which used to exist in Minecraft, but were removed before the game was officially released. But back in the day, you could just spawn these guys by pressing the G key, meaning that most early Minecraft tests look like this whole mess. And while they were mostly harmless, there was a version that could damage and even kill the player, behaving much more like a zombie would. Though I'm sure if this was added in today, it would go a long way to help out map makers. I mean, you could make your own NPCs in the world. How cool could that be? And I mean, it's a lot smarter than whatever this is supposed to be. As you can see, when a gas shoots a fireball at Steve and Alex while they're in the nether, it doesn't just shoot the fireball, but it also recoils back from the action of shooting it, which in the actual game has never happened. And that just goes to show you Minecraft's lackluster representation of physics, since by having no recoil, this disobeys Newton's third law of motion. For every action, there should be an equal and opposite reaction. But obviously, gas have never been in the real world either. Maybe this is just how they work. The Ender Dragon is a destructive boss. Truly, unless the block is native to the end, the odds are that it's getting destroyed. And while it makes sense that the dragon could break down your cobblestone tower, why are ender chests on that list? After all, they're made of obsidian, so the logic would figure these are pretty safe. But as you can see when we put these next to the dragon, that's just not true. But hey, at least if she breaks this chest, your items are still well and good up in the cloud. This secret rabbit no longer exists in vanilla Minecraft. And the reason for that is because Jeb personally decided it wasn't worth adding into the game. So even though you can still get the killer rabbit by typing in this command, it'll never spawn naturally. The rabbit, which is a reference to the infamous Rabbit of Caerbannog from Monty Python and the Holy Grail, was an overplayed joke, according to Jeb. And as such, it'll never be added to the vanilla base game. but in certain snapshots it does still spawn randomly, and watch out for it there. For years now, many people have tried to get you to believe that you can actually break bedrock. It's just gonna take a lot of time. And for a while, there was a myth that if you spent 13 hours just mining a single block of bedrock, eventually it would crack. But in actuality, this one gets disproven easily when you look at the game's code. Since the way that it's set, it has a hardness value of -1, which with the integer system that Minecraft uses, that -1 essentially means infinity. So no matter how long you spend mining that bedrock, whether it's 13 hours or 13 years, it's never gonna crack. I mean, it is possible to break the unbreakable block, just not with your pickaxe. Hanging roots aren't a very useful item, but mhmm must have thought they were pretty important, since back in the first pre-release for Minecraft 1.17, there was a very strange visual bug where if you threw out the hanging roots, it would render at the same size as the item when placed down on the ground, which made it dwarf every other item they would throw on the ground. And when you look at this, it sure does seem important, but when you actually place down the item, not as much. This mob could have been in Minecraft, but now it never will. See, from the 2017 mob vote, mhmm showed off 4 designs, with only the Phantom being the one to make it into the game. And according to the developers, the other ones that got outvoted are doomed to never be released in game. So this Kraken mob will only exist in this mod. The Monster of the Ocean Depths, as it was called, is a hostile mob that chases you down, whether you're swimming or in a boat. And if it gets close, it'll pull you in like so. Which sounds scary, but how much worse could this be than a drowned trident? That's true fear. Though the Kraken wasn't even the most dangerous mob that got outvoted. But before we talk about the wildfire, we need to look at the Great Hunger. Think of this mob like a bear trap. It burrows into the ground, and then, when you walk by, it pounces from the floor and attacks you. Which sounds bad, but this mob can actually be quite useful. See, if you were to throw 2 enchanted books, both with sharpness 5, into its mouth, it'll swallow them like so. And then, if we throw in a sword thereafter, it'll be enchanted now with sharpness 6. Yeah, this thing is basically a supercharged anvil, allowing for items that we could never have possible in vanilla. And if I were you, I'd use this to put together some extra strong fire protection, because we're gonna need it when fighting this thing. Now, at first glance, this mob looks a lot like a blaze, but make no mistake, this wildfire would have been a much more fierce variant to fight in the Nether. With tons of health and even its own armor, this mob is very tough to get rid of. That, and it can even put up its own shields to become temporarily invulnerable. So to kill this, it'd probably be best to keep our distance, since it can send out a wave of fireballs like so. And that's no joke, especially when it gets stronger the lower that its health bar gets. And maybe it's for the best that we don't have to fight such a thing in our vanilla fortresses. But if you're in Minecraft dungeons, it's not as safe for you. In this snapshot, if you were to die when you respawned, then what would happen is that you would actually be put into this weird purgatory state between survival and spectator mode. And if that already wasn't existential enough, you could also kill yourself by simply punching, given a death message that would say that you were killed by you, with the player's name there and everything. And honestly, dying was the most interesting thing you could do back then. Since you weren't able to move, you could only place down certain blocks, and you were not able to break free. So yeah, I'll stick to punching. In the announcement trailer for the Buzzy Bees update, you notice that when you peek inside the beehive, you can actually see the bees sleeping. Which not only can you not peek inside of the beehive, but the bees also don't really sleep. And the only mobs that you're gonna see do as much are villagers, bats, and foxes. Which is a shame, because I think having a particle effect like this with the little Z's floating up would be a really fun effect for when mobs are snoozing. Anvils should be one of the strongest blocks in the game. I mean, with a crafting recipe that almost requires a half stack of ingots, you definitely hope this investment could hold up. But apparently, even the smallest flower in the game can still break a block like this. As shown, you could drop an anvil in just about any decoration block in the game, and it'll break upon landing. And then, just as you start to understand that logic, it still manages to break this dead bush, making the whole thing even more ridiculous. Iron golems can be a decent bit of help if you need it, and at the very least, they'll work the graveyard shift at your local village. So just round up the iron, set it up like this, and the job will be done. Or maybe not. You see, if the pumpkin isn't placed last, then the golem will not spawn even when it's in proper formation. And in fairness, this is likely a holdover from the older versions where you couldn't even place a pumpkin unsupported. So, as such, the code never accounted for the possibility. Mummies will never make it into Minecraft. Now, why do I sound so sure? Well, because mhmm themselves deemed that mummies and husk would be too similar of a mob to have in the game. And looking at them side by side, I do see their point. But it would be a cool idea to have some kind of mini-boss inside of the desert pyramids, similar to how we have the Elder Guardians in the Ocean Monument. And if Tango Tech's concept is anything to go by, there's a lot of potential here for a memorable fight. See, if you build a map art design over the end void, it'll be transparent and invisible item frame, which lets us make our own painted designs. So you can make stone look like diamond ore and prank some of your greedy friends. I know we don't like to talk about it, but if you actually crunch the numbers, Minecraft is ripping you off. If you look at it, it takes 6 planks to craft 4 stairs. even though a stair's 3/4 of a block. Where the extra parts go, I just don't know. I guess Steve is a bit of a wasteful person. And while again the stone cutter does dampen this blow, that's not an option for any wood items. And folks, there's nothing I like less than getting stolen out of my hard-earned materials. Before you raid this shipwreck, you'll want to get out the measuring tape, because the only legal way to do treasure hunting is if a shipwreck is more than 3 miles offshore. And in Minecraft, 3 miles is approximately 4,828 blocks. So for maritime rule to kick in, you probably don't want to raid any ships that got a little bit too close to the coast. Now, if you look at any of the trailers for Minecraft, you'll notice that they don't match any of the textures that we see in the game, which luckily is not an issue that we can't solve, since by downloading this texture pack called Bare Bones, the makers of the pack have done an exquisite job of recreating every texture to look like how it does in the trailers. And while it still looks a bit more simplistic in-game than it ever does in a pre-rendered trailer, with the right shaders installed, you can really get this to look pretty close. And personally, my favorite is to pair this with something like the Fresh Animations pack as well. That'll make your game really feel more alive. When Alex falls off her roller coaster into the lush cave, you'll notice that this behaves very differently from how minecarts fall in the base game. For one, both the cart and Alex seem to experience some form of proper projectile motion, whereas in actual Minecraft, entities tend to have immense amounts of drag through the air. And also, the minecart's falling while still angled from the rail, whereas what would actually happen is that it stays on the same axis and falls level. This is what the Wither looks like in 1.18, and this is what a Wither looks like in Minecraft 2.0. See, this here is the Friendly Wither, a mob exclusive to Java Edition's 2.0 update. But that update will never officially come out, since it's another one of Mojang's April Fool's jokes. Though if you have that update, it is possible to spawn in the pink Wither by placing a potted rose on top of pink wool. And instead of destroying blocks nearby like the regular Wither, this one will actually heal mobs and grow plants like so. And that's not the only useful mob from Minecraft 2.0. See, the chicken also got a new variant, and this blue one is called the Diamond Chicken. Now, I'm sure you can guess what it does from the name, and sure enough, this OP chicken lays diamonds and lapis instead of eggs. Though be careful fighting with any of these things, because they're actually neutral mobs now, and they'll explode when they're killed. And if those are my options, I'd much rather get free diamonds than blown up. Just saying. People often talk about how rare the blue axolotl is, but there actually was one even rarer. And the only place to find the green axolotl variant was in the Caves and Cliffs update for part 1. Now, if you blink, you might miss it, but in fact, there it is. And this green variant was also shown off in early promotional images released for the game. And honestly, I don't know how hard it would have been to add in a green axolotl like this anyway. But it also doesn't look like we're ever gonna learn the answer, since when Lady Agnes was asked this question on stream, this is what she had to say.
Yes, I'm not sure I can answer that right now, I'm sorry.
But hey, I guess a non-answer is better than no answer at all. At least I acknowledged it. This is a miner, this is a miner, and this is a miner's ghost. Now, the idea behind these would be to have lost spirits walking around the caves that could help guide the player to treasure and valuable ores. But as cool as that sounds, Mojang considered it before ultimately rejecting the idea for making it into the game. And this might have something to do with the fact that ghosts are considered as banned media in certain territories. Or maybe they just don't want any ties to a certain creepypasta. And speaking of which, Herobrine isn't just a Minecraft myth, he's a Minecraft icon. Dating back to a community-made story on 4chan, Herobrine supposedly leaves around spooky sand pyramids and long, pointless tunnels around your single-player world. And despite what some players try to get you to believe, he doesn't exist and never existed in Minecraft's code. But that doesn't mean that Notch didn't acknowledge it, since in fact, back in the day, Notch did say on Twitter that he planned to add Herobrine to the game soon. Though, this obviously never happened, and the most that we ever got, and likely will ever get, are these official changelogs saying things suggesting that Herobrine was finally removed, even if he wasn't there in the first place. Villagers have golems, and illagers have nothing. Now, this is actually intentional, since Mojang has spoken out against adding an illager version of the Iron Golem mob. And considering that the illagers already have Ravagers to help them on their raids, it would make the deck pretty stacked in their favor to have yet another mob helping them out. But in the 1.19 snapshots, it looks as if the illagers are kidnapping Allays and then corrupting them into Vexes. So what if they did the same to the captured golems? And having a rusted or evil variant might be a new way to spice up these pillager outposts. In the announcement trailer for the Minecraft livestream in 2022, you'll notice that in this example, there's multiple frogs that are able to ride in one minecart, which not only doesn't happen with any mob in the base game, but here we're also able to see the frogs. Since in reality, if you get a frog inside of a minecart, the only way you're going to be able to see it is from above. of. They're just too small within the minecart's model. Oh, and also, they got a warden inside of a minecart too. Don't think I didn't miss that. In the trailer for the Wild update, you can see that the chicken's noticeably scared of the warden. I mean, who wouldn't be if it hits like this? But in reality, the chickens are never scared of any mobs in the game, even the ones that are hostile towards them. But that's not going to stop the warden from attacking it. If it gets too close and creates a sound, even if it isn't scared, the warden will give it a reason to be. And in fact, the only time they ever get scared in the game is if we happen to hit them and then they start running around frantically. Does that mean we're a bigger monster than the warden? Maybe that's fair. Here's why you legally can never kill a creeper. Because by law, you're not allowed to kill something unless it's attacked you first. After all, that's self-defense. But while zombies and skeleton take the first shot, a creeper doesn't attack you until it explodes. And by that point, it's too late. We can't exactly retaliate. So if you're trying to stay on the up and up, maybe just place down a block like this at the feet so that you'll stay safe, and a peaceful bystander, both of which will look better on your permanent record. There must have been some disagreement about how drip leaves work between the trailer team and the actual developers. Since when you watch drip leaves in the trailer, Alex is bouncing off of them, using them to spring from one to the other, but in game, they're not springy, they're quite the opposite. They just droop and fall. But even with that disappointment, the lush caves that she's in still seem a lot better than what Steve's dealing with, so I guess it's not that much of a loss. But one of the biggest losses in translation is that we don't have splashes like this in the base game. Though through the help of a mod like this by Dr. Rat, there is a way to play with these in the game. And my personal favorite feature of this is that the size of the entity dictates how big the splash is going to be. So while items might only make a few small splashes like this, if you throw a larger mob into the water, it's going to be a lot more noticeable. And if anything, having this in the game would make fishing a lot more satisfying, since it hasn't been a lot of fun since 1.16 changed the treasure loot. Before any other slab was added to Minecraft, the first of the bunch was actually a dirt slab. But even though it was the first, it never made it past any of the older versions, which is definitely a shame for builders, but with a texture like this, it might have been too distracting to build with anyway. Stop using a sword to try and break cobwebs, because instead, it's possible to break these even faster by using a water bucket. So next time that you're stuck down in a spider's domain, it'd be better to pour out some flowing water instead of wasting any durability on your diamond sword. The water's also a lot more reusable, so I doubt there's any objections. If you don't have a compass, try looking out for some pumpkins. Crazy as that might sound, the pumpkin stem is always rendered in such a way where it's facing towards the northwest direction. And there you go. Even if you don't have a north star, you've essentially got a north squash. So if you know what direction your base is, this will at least help you get back on track. Which is all particularly helpful if you don't have something like the debug screen if you're playing on Bedrock. Mushrooms seem to get a weird amount of love in Minecraft. I mean, how many other games do you know that have an entire mushroom biome and mushroom mob to choose from? Oh, what's weird is that with all this love of mushrooms, Mojang's never added in a classic mushroom feature from other games, which is to have glowing mushrooms. And the reason being is that Mojang thinks it's just too generic and overused. But what's funny still is that they're actually used in the game by Mojang, since the current mushrooms that we have give off a light level of 1, which is why we're able to make a slime farm like this. The slimes are able to spawn in that level of brightness, but no other mobs can. While I'm sure plenty of you are familiar with the Legacy Console Edition that was since abandoned for Minecraft consoles, it turns out that the actual shortest-lived version of Minecraft Console Edition existed exclusively on the new Nintendo 3DS system, since that version only lasted for 1 year, 4 months, and 3 days to the date. Or it did if you happen to live in North America and Japan, since if you lived in parts of Europe or Oceania, this version only lasted for 3 months and 27 days. But ever since January 15th of 2019, it received its final update, and it seems like Mojang and everyone else just wants to forget about it. I mean, now especially with the Nintendo stores being shut down on the 3DS and Wii U, there's really no way to go back and experience this even if you wanted to. But considering how many features weren't in the game, that might have been for the best. Since if you were able to get the Elytra in this version, it wasn't nearly as good as it is for us on Java and Bedrock. I mean, here we had no options to use firework rockets. They were completely absent from the code, so you couldn't boost your Elytra off the ground. Which, to take an endgame item and make it this pitiful, I think speaks to the quality of this version. Maybe it's for the best that it's left on dying hardware. Instead of finding shelter on your first day, Mojang would rather that you take all of the dirt around your spawn, build it up into a stack, so that you have a dirt pillar to mark your spawn coordinates. Which will be hard to miss, but there's one key flaw with this, which is that if you were to die and need to find back where you started, it's not gonna be hard. You spawn back at the world spawn, which would be right where you put the pillar anyway. All this does is add insult to injury. And for all that work, I'd rather spend that dirt to defend myself against the monsters at night. A dirt hut is a lot nicer for defense than just having a big pillar. Mojang's way for killing Vexes might just take the cake for stupidity, since according to the book, the way you're supposed to kill Vexes is using lava. But you might find that challenging, given that Vexes are able to fly around and phase through blocks. Oh, and also, they take no damage from lava. Honestly, it baffles me that no one writing this book ever took the time to boot these up and try them for themselves. But hey, at least it's funny. When preparing to go to the Nether, you're apparently supposed to have a full set of enchanted diamond armor, which is a tall order, but that's not the toughest thing that Mojang wants you to get, since before going to the Nether, they recommend getting yourself a fire res potion. And the only issue with that is that the magma cream that we need to make this is only accessible in the Nether, and that would seem like we're at something of a standstill. How do you prepare for the Nether when the only ingredients that you need are still left in the Nether? But of all of Mojang's crazy ideas for the Nether, this one might take the cake, or rather bake the cake. Since as you can see from this example, Mojang wants you to go through the effort of moving cows and chickens into the Nether, so that way you'll have a small bakery to craft up your cakes. And while I suppose that you could move over the cows and chickens necessary to do this, the simple truth is it's never going to be as easy to farm wheat in the Nether as it is in the overworld. At least, you would think. But according to the guidebook, you're apparently able to use wet sponges to plant and grow crops inside of the Nether. But obviously, Mojang missed the memo here, since not only does our water source instantly evaporate in the Nether, but our sponges also instantly dry out. In fact, that's like the whole reason to bring a wet sponge into the Nether. Who knows, maybe at some point this was actually a feature in the game, which could have been a cool way to have water inside of the Nether, or at least a cooler way than having it inside of a cauldron, since that's never been helpful anyway. This official Minecraft skin was lost to time, but back when Mojang first put out the original Minecraft trailer, there did exist this different variant of Steve that never got used, where instead of the blue shirt and jeans that we're used to, he was wearing a gray shirt and mossy cobblestone pants, which is definitely a look. But with all the new Minecraft skins that they added into the launcher, I'm still amazed this one's never seen the light of day. Although I guess it did show up in a trailer that was seen by over 100 million people, so that's not exactly underground. If you look closely at Alex's old skin file, you notice that within the texture data, there were hidden pixels that added glasses to the character. And the reason for this was actually supposed to be a reference to Minecraft's developer Jeb, since they also have an orange ponytail and glasses of their own. But even when you loaded up the skin, this was never visible. So it's essentially the same way that Jeb signed skins in the past, except with a bit more of a unique flair than just writing out your own name. This feature was added to Minecraft, but it was never supposed to be added to Minecraft. Let me explain. Since while working on the Christmas and New Year update for Minecraft, Dinnerbone snuck in the texture for these skis. But the truth was that there was never supposed to be any kind of ski item added to Minecraft. The whole reason it was just added into the files is a red herring for any players that checked. Which I guess does work. I mean, they can't leak the features if the features aren't even in the game. But partner with the Christmas textures for chests and the like, you can see how people got confused. As user the PJG shows off on Reddit, if you play the music discs 5, 11, and 13, starting them at 5, 11, and 13 seconds respectively, the three mesh together into a coherent story. And you can hear some of that here. It's definitely creepy, but I'm sure this is a huge help for anyone who wants to do lore theory crafting. And at this point, Minecraft feels a lot more like an indie horror game than just a regular indie game. And I'd rather stick to the cute things like axolotls and sheep. Thanks. This arrow was never supposed to exist in Minecraft. So, how did we get it? Well, by using the give command, you're able to get yourself some custom arrow variants like this one. And there you go. Potion variants of arrows that we were never supposed to have can function just the same, even if there's no potion associated with it. And I think this would open up a whole new slew of custom PvP maps that you should try out in the future. And with that, folks, YouTube thinks that you might like this video, so see if they're right and have a good one, alright?